When we talk about luxury, the same places always come to mind. Las Vegas with its neon lights, Dubai with its sail-shaped hotels, Monaco full of yachts and casinos, and so on. But there is a tiny country, the size of an average municipality lost in the desert, that has also made it onto the list of the richest in the world. We are talking about Qatar, a place where you find air-conditioned stadiums, artificial islands, luxury cars on every corner, and an airline that ranks at the top of the world rankings. And the big question is, how did this happen? How did a piece of desert with no rivers, no forests, and nomadic routes become a futuristic metropolis and synonymous with wealth? That's the story Bello Mundo is going to tell today. Number 1. Location and general information. Qatar is a tiny peninsula that juts out into the Persian Gulf. It is just over 71 miles long, meaning you can drive from one end to the other in a few hours. To the south, it borders only Saudi Arabia. On all other sides, it is surrounded by sea. This position has always been strategic, a kind of crossroads between the Arab world and international shipping routes. On the east coast is Doha, the capital. This is where most of the population lives and where almost everything that the world recognizes as the face of Qatar is concentrated. Futuristic skyscrapers, gigantic museums, modern stadiums, and shopping malls that look more like palaces. Outside the capital, the scenery changes suddenly. The country is almost entirely flat and desert, covered with sand and rocks. There are no permanent rivers or natural lakes. The climate tests any human endurance, long, dry, and suffocating summers, with temperatures easily exceeding 113 degrees Fahrenheit. When it rains, it is so rare that it makes the news. In winter, the heat gives a respite, but the sun remains steady in the sky almost every day. Number 2. History. Long before it became synonymous with luxury and glass skyscrapers, Qatar was just a piece of desert in the Persian Gulf. Life here was simple and hard. The economy revolved around fishing and, above all, pearl diving, and not just any pearls. Qatar became famous for having some of the most valuable pearls in the world. Divers descended without modern equipment, armed only with courage, a nose clip, and as much breath as their lungs could hold. Doha was not yet the great capital we know today. It was a series of coastal villages living off this activity, while its neighbors saw Qatar as a secondary land with few resources. The change began in the 19th century when the British arrived. The Persian Gulf was strategic for the British Empire. Controlling those waters meant protecting trade routes to India. It was in this context that the Al Thani family gained prominence. They were tribal leaders who knew how to unite communities and, little by little, consolidated their power. In 1868, a treaty officially recognized Sheikh Mohammed bin Thani as the ruler of Qatar. It was the beginning of a monarchy that remains to this day. After that, the territory lived under different influences. It passed through the Ottomans, became a British protectorate in the early 20th century. But throughout all these phases, the Al Thani family remained in charge. The turning point came in 1971, when Qatar finally became independent. The new sovereign state had Sheikh Khalifa bin Hamad Al Thani on the throne. In 95, Crown Prince Hamad bin Khalifa deposed his own father in a bloodless coup and took over the government. It was under him that Qatar projected itself to the world, rapid modernization and major investments. Since 2013, the ruler has been Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Hamad's son. Young, ambitious, and with the same idea of keeping the country in the spotlight, he leads Qatar in this mix of Bedouin tradition and technological future that we will learn more about in a moment. Number 3. The people, language, and religion. Qatar is a small country, but its diversity is impressive. The total population exceeds 3 million people, but only a small fraction are Qatari by birth. It is estimated that less than 15% are local citizens. The rest are foreigners from all over the world. In practice, this means that anyone walking through Doha will encounter a true mix of cultures. In cafes and markets, you will hear Arabic, English, Hindi, Tagalog, and Nepali. Construction sites are dominated by workers from South Asia. In offices, European engineers and managers from abroad. And of course, in government and power circles, there are the native Qataris, who are the only ones with full political rights and social privileges. The official language is Arabic, but English is used in almost everything, in schools, in business, and even on street signs. The official religion is Sunni Islam, and this is reflected in various aspects of daily life. Mosques are always full. Prayer times mark the rhythm of the day, and during the month of Ramadan, fasting is taken seriously. Still, the country takes a more flexible stance than some of its neighbors. Alcohol consumption, for example, is prohibited in public spaces, but allowed in hotels and licensed bars. This mix of religious tradition and openness to foreigners is part of what makes the country unique. It maintains its identity but knows it needs to be receptive to attract tourists, investors, and workers from abroad. Number 4. Customs and traditions. In terms of customs, Bedouin tradition is a source of pride. Hospitality is almost a law. Offering Arabic coffee with cardamom and a few dates to a visitor is part of the ritual of welcoming them. Family or friends gatherings usually take place in the majlis, the reception room decorated with cushions, where conversation flows freely. National identity is also reflected in clothing. Men wear the thobe, that impeccable white tunic, along with the gutra, the headscarf. Women wear the abaya, the black cloak, often accompanied by a veil. And here comes a curious detail. Many people imagine that because it is an Arab country, women always live under strict rules. In Qatar, the reality is a little different. They have full access to education, are increasingly present in the labor market, and even in government positions. In Doha, it is not uncommon to see young Qatari women driving their own luxury cars, working in large companies, or sitting in modern cafes. At the same time, there are still very clear divisions in some areas, such as religious and sporting events. It is this mix of tradition and modernity that gives Qatar its unique character. Conservative in many ways, but open enough to coexist with millions of foreigners and attract tourists and investors. And now that you know the location, have heard the history, and understand who the Qataris are, the question that begs to be asked is, how did such a small country manage to be among the richest on the planet? The answer, as you might imagine, is hidden under the sand. Number 5. The collapse of pearls and oil reserves. At the beginning of the 20th century, Qatar still lived mainly off pearls. They were the source of most of the country's wealth. But two changes turned this world upside down. The first was the arrival of cultured pearls from Japan, which were much cheaper than natural pearls, causing prices to plummet on the international market. The second was the Great Depression of the 30s, which reduced demand for luxury goods worldwide. The result was devastating. Qatar's economy collapsed, families lost their main source of livelihood, and the country became one of the poorest in the region. Many people, looking at that dry, riverless piece of desert, would say there was no future there. But the future was hidden beneath the sand. In 1939, British geologists found oil in Qatar. Large-scale exploration only began in the 40s, but the discovery already signaled a historic turning point. During World War II, production was interrupted, but soon after, the country plunged headlong into the oil industry. And that's when Doha, until then, a modest coastal village, began to transform. Roads were opened, schools and hospitals sprang up, and the local population, which had been living in poverty, began to see the first signs of prosperity. The money from black gold improved life, but the real treasure was still hidden. It was in the gigantic natural gas reserves. Number 6. Natural gas. Qatar owns part of the North Field, the largest natural gas field on the planet, which extends to Iran, where it is called South Pars. We are talking about a colossal reserve capable of placing the country on the world podium. Today, Qatar is the third largest natural gas power, behind only Russia and Iran itself. And unlike oil, which is subject to unstable prices and heavy competition, natural gas has given Qatar a unique strategic advantage. The country has invested in technology that cools gas until it turns into liquid, the famous LNG, liquefied natural gas. This way, it can be transported by ship to anywhere on the planet. Today, the Emirate is one of the world's largest exporters of LNG, supplying countries in Asia, such as Japan and South Korea, and Europe, especially after the energy crisis caused by the war in Ukraine. This is how this small territory went from being a poor desert to becoming a global energy powerhouse, with billion-dollar contracts on virtually every continent. This model has generated huge financial reserves and shielded the economy from short-term crises. Most importantly, instead of just exporting and spending, leaders have turned this wealth into a springboard for something bigger. Number 7. Investments. The Al Thani family created the Qatar Investment Authority, a sovereign wealth fund that functions as a global savings account. Instead of keeping the money idle, they spread the profits from oil and gas into strategic investments around the world. Today, the Emirate has stakes in giants such as Volkswagen, Barclays, and Harrods, as well as real estate in London, Paris, and New York. In other words, wealth was not restricted to the desert. It was transformed into businesses that guarantee returns for decades. At home, investments have also changed everything. Hamad International Airport looks more like a luxury shopping mall than an airport terminal. Qatar Airways has become synonymous with quality, consistently ranking among the best airlines on the planet. And all this follows a simple logic. The country is halfway between Europe, Asia, and Africa. Instead of seeing this as just geography, they turned it into an advantage. Today, millions of passengers connect in Doha every year, and each of them leaves a little money behind, helping to boost the economy and reinforce the image of a modern power. But of course, that wasn't all. The wealth didn't stay at home. Number 8. International projection. Qatar understood early on that to be respected abroad, it needed a voice and a presence. And that's where soft power came in, the power of cultural, media, and sporting influence. In 1996, Al Jazeera was born, a government-funded TV channel that gave the Emirate a visibility that no one could have imagined. For the first time, the region had a broadcaster transmitting news in Arabic 24 hours a day. Its editorial freedom surprised its neighbors and caught the attention of the whole world. Al Jazeera quickly became a benchmark, and the country's name was on everyone's lips. Soon after came sports. In 2011, the Sovereign Wealth Fund bought Paris Saint-Germain, one of France's most traditional clubs. And it didn't stop there. Millions were spent on signings such as Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe. The team became a global showcase, and along with it, the country's name was emblazoned on shirts, broadcasts, and newspaper covers in the four corners of the globe. In diplomacy, the same style. The territory is home to the largest U.S. airbase in the Middle East, but at the same time maintains dialogue with Iran, the Taliban, and even groups that neighbors prefer to avoid. This flexibility has transformed the emirate into a mediator of conflicts, even though it is small and surrounded by controversy. And of course, there was the boldest move of all, the right to host the 2022 World Cup. Billions in investments put Doha in the spotlight. For an entire month, all eyes were on the air-conditioned stadiums built in the middle of the desert. But along with the visibility came criticism. The biggest target was foreign workers, people from South Asia who built skyscrapers, roads, and arenas, but who for years lived in precarious accommodations and worked long hours. The kafala system, which tied visas to employers, was denounced as abusive by international organizations. During the World Cup construction, deaths and accidents made headlines, and the government was pressured to act. Some reforms emerged. A universal minimum wage was created, and the kafala system began to be relaxed. For many people, the changes came late, but they helped soften the country's image. In the end, the emirate showed flexibility. It discovered that being rich was not enough. It needed to be relevant. And it used media, sports, and diplomacy to achieve this place in the world. Number 9. Sovereign wealth funds and international luxury. Today, the country's sovereign wealth fund manages more than $450 billion spread around the world. These are investments in shopping malls, hotels, technology companies, industries, and even sports teams. It is as if the emirate were that silent investor who is in almost everything that makes a profit. And this wealth is reflected at home. The capital looks like something out of a futuristic project. The West Bay neighborhood is a forest of glass and steel skyscrapers, each building with a design more daring than the next. One was made to resemble the curved blade of a scimitar. Another took on a cylindrical shape full of arabesques. Everything is built to impress. On the coast, the Pearl was born, an artificial island shaped like a necklace. There are marinas, high-end buildings, luxurious restaurants, and designer stores. It is the postcard of ostentation, where local and foreign millionaires buy apartments that cost millions of dollars. The square meter in Doha is among the most expensive in the Middle East, and luxury cars circulate as if they were commonplace. Hotels, on the other hand, seem to compete to see who can deliver the most extravagance. There are 7-star suites, resorts that simulate private beaches, and even air-conditioned outdoor streets in some parts of Lusail, the city planned for the World Cup. Culture is also part of this package. The Museum of Islamic Art was designed by architect Yeo Ming Pei, who also created the glass pyramid at the Louvre in Paris. It houses one of the most impressive collections of Islamic art in the world. The National Museum of Qatar, shaped like a desert rose, tells the story and identity of the country. It is worth remembering that the Al Thani family is one of the largest art buyers on the planet. Most of these acquisitions were made precisely to supply local museums and reinforce the country's image as a cultural center. Number 10. The future of Qatar. Qatar became rich by betting everything on oil and, above all, natural gas. But its leaders themselves know that this source is not eternal. Whether due to depletion or because the world is moving towards cleaner energies, the era of hydrocarbons will lose ground. That is why the country is already talking about National Vision 2030. The idea is to diversify the economy so as not to depend solely on what is under the ground. An important part of this project is investing in education. Renowned universities such as Georgetown and Cornell have opened campuses in Doha. There is even Education City, an entire neighborhood dedicated to science, research, and innovation. Tourism is another pillar. After the World Cup, the idea is to transform the country into a permanent destination. Modern museums, luxury resorts, and major international events are at the heart of the strategy. Of course, there are also dilemmas. The native population is small and heavily dependent on the state. Most jobs are still held by foreigners, and pressure for more political participation may grow in the future. The country will have to find a balance between tradition, prosperity, and openness. What can be said is that, so far, Qatar has shown an ability to reinvent itself. It emerged from pearl poverty, rode the oil boom, dominated the gas market, and projected itself onto the world stage. If it can repeat the formula, it may remain a benchmark for wealth even when the last well dries up. So, what did you think of Qatar? Tell me in the comments what surprised you the most. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone who will also be impressed by this story. See you at the next destination on our Bello Mundo.